guys, so welcome back again to my mini lecture video. So for today's discussion, we're going to talk about humans and the biodiversity crisis. Biodiversity loss, also called loss of biodiversity. A decrease in biodiversity within a species, an ecosystem, a given geographic area, or Earth as a whole. Biodiversity or biological diversity is a term that refers to the number of genes, species, individual organisms within a given species, and biological communities within a defined geographic area ranging from the smallest to the global biosphere. Biodiversity describes the richness and variety of life on Earth. It is the most complex and important feature of our planet. Without biodiversity, life would not sustain. It is important in natural as well as artificial ecosystem. Biodiversity holds ecological and economic significance. It provides us with nourishment, housing, fuel, clothing, and several other resources. It also extracts monetary benefits through tourism. Therefore, it is very important to have a good knowledge of biodiversity for a sustainable livelihood. The biodiversity crisis. The Earth's biodiversity is in grave danger. In the present era, human beings are the most dangerous cause of the destruction of the Earth's biodiversity. In 2006, the terms threatened, endangered, or rare were used to describe the status of many species. Natural biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss is typically associated with more permanent ecological changes in ecosystems, landscapes, and the global biosphere. Natural ecological disturbances such as wildfire, floods, and volcanic eruptions change ecosystems drastically by eliminating local pollutants of some species and transforming whole biological communities. Such disturbances are temporary. However, because natural disturbances are common and ecosystems have adapted to their challenges. Human-driven biodiversity loss. In contrast from the natural biodiversity loss, biodiversity losses from disturbances caused by humans tend to be more severe and longer lasting. Humans, their crops, and their food animals take up an increasing share of Earth's land area. Half of the world's habitable land has been converted to agriculture, and some 77% of agricultural land is used for grazing by cattle, sheep, goats, and other livestock. The massive conversion of forests, wetlands, grasslands, and other terrestrial ecosystems has produced a 60% decline in the number of vertebrates worldwide since 1970. And between 1970 and 2014, the human population grew from about 3.7 billion to 7.3 billion people. By 2018, the biomass of humans and their livestock greatly outweighed the biomass of wild mammals and wild birds. Researchers estimate that the current rate of species loss varies between 100 and 10,000 times the background extinction rate. In addition, a 2019 report by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services noted that up to 1 million plant and animal species are facing extinction due to human activities. Researchers have identified 5 important drivers of biodiversity loss. First, habitat loss and degradation, which is any thinning, fragmentation, or destruction of any existing natural habitat, reduces or eliminates the food resources and living space for most species. Species that cannot migrate are often wiped out. Second, invasive species, which are non-native species that significantly modified or disrupt the ecosystem they colonize, may outcompete native species for food and habitat, which triggers population declines in native species. Invasive species may arrive in new areas through natural migration or through human introduction. Third, overexploitation, which is the harvesting of game animals, fish, or other organisms beyond the capacity for surviving populations to replace their losses. Result is some species being depleted to very low numbers and others being driven to extinction. Fourth, pollution, which is the addition of any substances or any form of energy to the environment at a rate faster than it can be dispersed, diluted, decomposed, recycled, or stored in some harmless form, contributes to biodiversity loss by creating health problems in exposed organisms. In some cases, exposure may occur in doses high enough to kill outright or create reproductive problems that threaten the species' survival. Fifth, climate change associated with global warming, which is the modification of Earth's climate caused by burning of fossil fuels, which is caused by industry and other human activities. Fossil fuel combustion produces greenhouse gases that enhance the atmospheric absorption of infrared radiation and trap the heat, influencing temperature and precipitation patterns. Ecologists emphasize that habitat loss and invasive species are the primary drivers of biodiversity loss, but they acknowledge that climate change could become a primary driver as the 21st century progresses. Ecological effects. The rate of biodiversity loss is most pronounced on species whose population are decreasing. The loss of genes and individuals threatens the long-term survival of a species, as mates become scarce and risk from inbreeding rise when closely related survivors mate. The wholesale loss of populations also increases the risk that a particular species will become extinct. Biodiversity is critical for maintaining ecosystem health. Declining biodiversity lowers an ecosystem productivity and lowers the quality of ecosystem services. Biodiversity loss also threatens the structure and proper functioning of the ecosystem. Economic and societal effects. Biodiversity loss affects economic system and human society. Humans rely on various plants, animals, and other organisms for food, building materials, and medicines, and their availability as commodities is important to many cultures. The loss of biodiversity among these critical natural resources threatens global food security and the development of new pharmaceuticals to deal with future diseases. Simplified homogenized ecosystems can also represent as aesthetic loss. And this ends our discussion about humans and the biodiversity crisis. I hope you learned something from this discussion and see you on my next many lecture videos.